house. What happened? Today, while I was sleeping, Caleb was awake, and you were
I was in the bathroom.
You were having your private time in the bathroom.
Sitting there.
And then all of a
sudden, at 5:45 a.m., this little creature runs underneath the door and runs straight into my feet.
Oh,
and it was this little mouse. It was like I felt as if the mouse was running from something, which concerns me because it literally ran straight underneath the door and boom, right into my feet, and then it like was dazed and confused and scurried around.
I think I'd like to call him Jim.
I'm 6'2", 245 pounds, ex-NFL linebacker, and I screamed.
But the thing is, you can't see this, but I'm sitting with my feet off of the ground right now because Jim is wandering around somewhere.
I'm not okay so loud. I don't know how you didn't wake up.
No, I was in my deep REM.
I screamed so loud. What is up, everyone? And welcome back to our YouTube channel. We're Kara and Caleb.
I'm Kara.
And I'm Caleb.
We're going to talk about when it's appropriate in a relationship to say I love you for the first time. When is it appropriate in a relationship?
I'm like going through the Rolodex of memories of
when
the
you were
times that I've said I love you in like past relationships.
Inappropriate.
Yeah.
To qualify,
we live and we learn.
We live and we learn. To qualify for this video, there is absolutely never a formula to when it is appropriate to say I love you.
Like any other big questions in life, we want the answers to be black and white.
Yes.
To probably reduce the uncertainty.
Yes.
But saying I love you, like, am I supposed to stay? Am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to take this job offer or this job offer? All of these big decisions that really shape and define our lives. There is a lot of, we live in the gray area.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And it's really up to you as an individual when you feel peace about something. So that's kind of the journey. But we want us to talk about maybe some ways that are not great times to say I love you for the first time.
Yeah.
And then maybe talk about some practical questions you can ask yourself.
Yeah, and also I want to talk about how, looking back in my life, like I've had 4 girlfriends before I met you, and I said I love you early on inside of every relationship. But I also said I love you early on in our relationship, and it was right. But in those relationships, it was not right.
It was coming from a different energy.
And as I have been able to grow and heal and reflect and look back, it's clear that what I was doing is I wasn't saying I love you as much as I was trying to gain control of the relationship where I felt extremely vulnerable and exposed. Right? So my I love you wasn't about love, it was actually a trauma response.
Yeah.
And that's what I would love to talk a little bit about on today's video. But as Kara said, to start, when should you not say I love you for the first time? So when you're drunk, maybe not the best time to say. Are you pointing? I never did that. Maybe not the best time to say I love you for the first time. No, not please do not say I love you when you are drunk.
It's so easy though. It's like we see it in all the movies when the guy's like hammered and then he's, trying to.
Why is it gonna be the guy?
Because it's usually the guy trying to hold on to the girl. He's like, I love you. And he's drunk. Not the best time.
Also,
be in a coherent space when you communicate that I love you to your partner for the first time.
Don't say I love you just because you feel pressured to say I love you.
Yep.
Not a good one.
Yep. Don't say I love you over text message.
I might have done that. I don't know. Back in the day.
It's so tempting. We live in a very texty world, but I just think like as humans who need verbal communication, it's so important to create safety in the relationship to use your words to communicate how you feel. So saying I love you for the first time is a really big deal. And I think that using verbal words is just a better way to do that.
Can we just say that if you are watching this video, there's a good chance that you are in a romantic partnership with somebody and you are asking yourself, is this a good time to say, I love you? And I think that is so exciting.
It is so
I think that's amazing if you are there, or maybe somebody just said I love you and it's really, really soon and you're trying to determine if it's a flag, a red flag or not. Needless to say, you're here and in one way or the other, your life's about to expand.
So also don't say I love you for the first time if you're trying to save or hold on to the relationship. Like if the relationship is crumbling and you think that I love you is going to save it, probably not the best way to use the first I love you.
Definitely not. But what was your experience saying I love you? You know what?
I didn't actually say I love you very much. I said it in my early 20s to like my first boyfriend who I was like, I'm going to marry you. And then I think I probably responded. So I did the taboo thing of like responding with the I love you if somebody else said pressured. It. I felt the pressure. I felt like, oh, you said it. And I think too, like sometimes we're caught up in emotion and we just think we're in love, and then we get to a different state of life and we're like, whoa, what was that? But yeah, I responded out of pressure. Which I don't think is a great way to use the I love you.
And I just want to be clear, we're not trying to be condescending in any way here and making light. I'm not saying that's you at all. No. But trying to make light of this or anything like that, or like talk down on somebody that's in this place. I just think that when we say I love you and we really don't mean it, or we reduce what that actually entails, we do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And I have wreaked a lot of havoc and caused a lot of damage in my past romantic partnerships that I've had to apologize for. They came from a place of immaturity, and they came from a place of emotional dysregulation. They came from a place of trauma. Well, and so that's why I think this question is really, really important.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, like I think that the words I love you carry weight for a lot of people. So when we use them flippantly or we use them lightheartedly, you can end up really hurting the other half of the situation.
Absolutely. And it just, I think, really, what's the word I'm looking for? It just makes things really messy. It makes things really messy because I think there is such a thing as a trauma bond.
Yeah.
Right? And we try to use I love you to stay in that trauma bond, which essentially is just going to implode at some point. That's what trauma bonds do, unless you learn how to self-regulate and really learn how to probably get therapy to work through a trauma bond, because it looks like love and it feels like love, but it's not love.
Absolutely.
And I think that is probably a good segue into my past experiences with saying I love you. And I am a very feely person. I'm a very emotional person. And so when I would get into a relationship early on, I would have all the feels and I'd have all the emotions. And I also, if you're familiar with attachment styles, and we should do a video on that at some point, I was also very anxiously attached. And why relationships are so incredibly important and valuable is not just because you get to do life with your partner, but because you learn how to co-regulate. Relationships help take your attachment styles, whether it's an avoidant attachment or an anxious attachment, to a secure attachment, right? When I feel emotionally safe inside of our relationship, I move closer to becoming secure attached, and that is a healthy relationship. So I was a very anxiously attached person. So, for instance, when I would start dating somebody new, I would feel very anxious, and if I didn't hear back from her, and I text her and didn't hear back from her, if I called her and didn't hear back from her, if she was going out with friends and she was trying to be present with her friends, but she didn't check in, all of that would trigger me.
That sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. It's unhealthy. And I know I'm not alone there. I know
You're
a lot
definitely
of people
not alone. No.
Feel that, right? And I would be so triggered, and I'm talking like in my body, trauma responses, like feeling the activation of that, and it would be overwhelming, and it usually led to very poor decisions, like showing up unannounced or checking phones or adding, like maybe we should just find our friends on our phone, like what do you think about that? Right? And so it would just result in very poor decisions that usually created tremendous amounts of friction. And I would say I love you early on to try to reduce my anxiety. Because I did not know how to self-soothe, because I did not know how to self-regulate when I was feeling so activated, right? I would now use I love you as a controlling mechanism to try to control the relationship and reduce the uncertainty, which led to the massive amounts of anxiety that I was feeling.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Which, if you imagine it, it's really just like hooking someone, right? It's like grabbing and holding on and making sure that they're there, so, and they're staying.
Yeah, and so I love you was never about like I choose you. I see you. I want to create emotionally safe spaces for you to grow. I want all of you. I fully accept you.
It wasn't
I
about
want to serve you.
It was about
It wasn't
me.
about you. I love you was more of a trauma response, and that is very damaging, and it creates a lot of problems. And so
that's kind of a hard thing to decipher. Like, am I saying this about you, or am I saying it because I need something?
This is why self-awareness and learning how to find somebody safe that you can talk to about this. Like, are you saying I love you from a place of like emotional chaos? Are you saying it because you feel out of control, because you feel anxious, because you feel these things? Because I love you is about you then, and about you feeling good. Or are you saying it because like, oh my God, like I can feel like I was made to love you, and I fully see you, and I'm committed to you, and I want you, and I want to love you, and I want to serve you. It's not, I have to make sacrifices in this relationship, and I don't see it as a sacrifice. I see it as a chance to love you better, to love you well, because I feel that, right?
Yeah. So let's like move into questions, because I think that's actually a really good movement into what are some questions you can ask yourself if you are wanting to say I love you for the first time in a relationship. What are some...
Again, which is freaking magical.
It's amazing.
Like relationships and love, and you can probably watch videos on like how we met and stuff like that. Have we done that?
I don't know.
I don't know. But like I greatly undermined how love can change a person's life.
Yeah.
Being seen and being able to fully show up in a relationship and allowing yourself to be fully seen because you feel so emotionally safe. And this is really what I experienced with you, is I felt so emotionally safe that I could begin to shed all of these facades, all of these masks, and fully present myself.
Yeah.
That changes your life.
Yeah.
And so if you are in that place and you feel that way in a relationship, frick, that's amazing. And so I'm excited for you.
This one loves love.
I love it too. Here are a few questions.
I have the first one.
Okay.
The first question that is coming to me is this idea of, do you feel like the most true, authentic version of yourself when you're with this person?
Yeah.
Do you feel permission to be fully you? And I think that comes back to this idea of safe space. I think that when we find a partner who can create safe space for us, there is this ability to show up fully as we are, as our most authentic selves. So in engaging the relationship that you're in, asking the question, am I fully me? Am I really showing up and feeling this experience of freedom to be fully myself in this moment?
That's a good one. Along with that, I think it's important to ask if you fully accept who that person is today. If that person never changes
from this day
from this moment on, if they stay exactly how they are,
yeah.
like, do you fully accept who they are today? Are you willing to choose them as they are today? As they are today.
Yeah.
Because the big mistake or the great tragedy that happens is oftentimes we fall in love with who we think they can be.
The potential of who they can become.
The expectations. And that causes problems down the road because maybe they never mature into that person, or they don't evolve into who you expect them to evolve into.
Yeah.
And that's just very problematic. And so, like, do you fully accept that person today? Do you know that person? Like, have you seen that person at their worst? Right? Because oftentimes early on in a relationship for so many months, or I don't know if there's months or days or weeks or what, we try to show up and be our best selves, right? We try to hide our imperfections. We try to hide the things that make us vulnerable. We try to hide the parts of us that were once rejected.
Which is very normal.
Which is extremely normal, right? Until, like you were talking about, until you feel emotionally safe, you can start presenting that and laying it on the table. But yeah. Do you really know them and accept who they are today? Yeah,
I think another good goalpost question is, are you needing something in return? So when you're coming into the moment of saying I love you, or really thinking about sharing that with the person, do you need them to say it back? Obviously, you want them to say it back. That is the goal and the hope and the desire. But do you need them to? If they don't, does it detract from what you're actually saying? And again, I think that's kind of a gauge for the, like, attachment or the controlling nature of sometimes when we use I love you, it's meant to hold on to. So do you need something in return?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just want to reiterate what my like early on experience, and like, if you're going to say I love you, is it coming from a trauma response? Is it coming from anxiety?
Yeah.
Is it coming from the need to control?
Yeah.
You know, I think that for a lot of people, and this isn't a black and white statement because it can't be, because it happened with us, like saying I love you early on is a red flag.
Can be a red flag.
It can be a red flag. We said I love you early on.
We said it very fast.
Right? But it was right. But I do think that oftentimes...
Can I say one thing about...
Let me just finish this one train of thought. I do think early on that if you say I love you, it can be a red flag because you're trying to reduce uncertainty. So here's what I would say. If somebody is saying I love you early on and you don't know if it's a red flag or if it's genuine, whatever it is, does that person actually demonstrate emotional maturity throughout their lives?
Mm-hmm.
Like if they are emotionally mature, if they are emotionally intelligent, if they demonstrate that across every avenue or every like facet of their life, is that the right word? Facet. If they demonstrate that through every facet of their life, I think it might not be a red flag, right? But if they're saying that, but they are emotionally immature or emotionally unavailable, then it might be a red flag.
Yeah. I just was going to jump in and interject when you said it was right for us. I don't know that it was right as much as it was peaceful. Yeah. It was like, because I shy away from the words right and wrong, but it was really, we felt a ton of peace and a deep knowing. We had a very deep knowing, and it didn't come from like, oh, I need you.
It wasn't a pros and cons list. It wasn't I need you.
It came from a very deep inner knowing in each of us that felt very peaceful. And I think that's another gauging question of like, does it feel peaceful? Do you feel total peace about sharing this statement with someone?
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. There are a few ways that you can determine, or questions that you can ask if it's time for you to say I love you. And again,
congratulations.
If you're watching this because you're about to say I love you, or you're in a relationship that's just so amazing, that's freaking awesome. It's going to change your life. And if you're watching this and you're determining that like, wow, I don't actually love this person, also, that's okay too. I know that there's a lot of loss and grief attached to walking away from a relationship that's not right. And it takes so much courage. And while it is incredibly challenging to do that sometimes, and to do it with an open heart and to do it with emotional honesty, what you're doing is you're creating space to invite the love that's right for you to come into your life. And so be present through that pain, hold your pain consciously through that season of letting go and grieving, but also know that your life is going to expand in the most unimaginable ways.
And if you're watching and you have a really cool I love you story, we want to hear it. We want to hear it. So put it in the comments below. We love I love you stories.
Thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon.